Freakish player, Damo, and he's called it quits. I think he's done the right thing, by the way. I reckon this should have been his last year. But what a privilege it's been to watch him go around.
It's a good word, isn't it? Privilege. It's always a sad moment when it comes, but it shouldn't be, because it is then cause and pause for reflection on what was, in my eyes, an instant legend status Hall of Fame career. And I don't say that lightly, because there's only 31 of them in the legend status, and they usually have to wait some years. In fact, there's only been 2 prior to him, Jim, who have actually been made legend prior to the age of 50. That's Lee Matthews and Tony Lockett.
Yep.
Lee Matthews was put in the first induction in 96, and Lockett got there at the age of 49. So everyone else got that after the age of 50. I feel he's worthy of being in that. Yeah. I mean, you've still got a few who are out in Carey, and Dunstall's not in, and Ablett as well.
And they will.
And they will. So between now and him getting in, you'd think they would be in, or at least conversations around that.
But only 6 players in our game have kicked 1,000 goals.
Yeah.
So...
And in the end, he's gone past it quite comfortably. So it settles and finishes at 1,066, which, if you look at that in the modern footy, he still kicked 50 goals last year in a year where his team finished in another grand final for him, and that's also part of the story. He lost his last 3 grand finals, lost 4 of the 6 grand finals he played in. And even that, I mean, he's such a decorated and celebrated player, and yet lost double the amount of grand finals that he won. And not through his own fault. I mean, he rolled an ankle in 2016. But, yeah, I mean, you've covered it, Jim. You covered the elimination final back in 2007, I think, didn't you, when he kicked that goal against Adelaide Crows?
From about 70 metres out. Yeah.
And,
shot.
And single-handedly won a game for Hawthorn in his 3rd season of football, and got them into the second week of finals. And then the next year they unexpectedly won that 2008 premiership. Your voice was over a couple of those goals he kicked. I think that was the one where he hurdled the Collingwood players, wasn't it?
Middle of the ground. Yeah.
And the famous Carl Hooker ones,
Bill,
and you keep raising it with him, and he asks you not to, but you make sure you do.
No, I don't anymore. But
he'll be happy, Hooksy. Like he was,
not tonight, he won't be.
Good that he's gone.
Not tonight.
So I never have to see that again.
Hooksy, don't watch the TV tonight.
Don't watch it tonight.
Any sports shows. But a nice little spread. 182 games Hawks, 580 goals, and 172 Sydney, 486 goals. So nice spread there. Well done to Liam Pickering, by the way, who put that deal together, that 9-year, $10 million deal.
He did.
He put all that together, old ham.
And then Buddy just got rid of him after he did that.
Well,
moved on.
I think Liam still got a
He does get a cut, yeah. We'll just take a listen. Because, look, he didn't... This is in keeping with how he's carried himself in the public eye. He hates media, and there's no way of dancing
So he wasn't there today?
He wasn't there today. And that originated back in the probably mid-stages of his Hawthorn life, when he couldn't get his head around the fascination with media about his life. So he wanted to go to Sydney to get away from it and become anonymous, and then he was papped in his first effective day in the Sydney. Anyway, John Longmire, coach of the Swans today, alongside Chief Executive Officer Tom Harley, spoke on his behalf.
He then rang me when I was sitting on the plane. He was pretty emotional and devastated that could be the way it's finished. It certainly sounded like he'd made the call there and then. I said, we just have a sleep on it, and we'll get up and have a chat this morning. And went to his place this morning. He made the decision clearly. He said that last time he'd had a calf injury like that, was in the same spot. He'd missed probably 10, 12 weeks of football.
So he missed a lot of footy, didn't he, at the Swans? As you said, Bill, even though he had the 10 seasons at the Swans, played less games as a Swan than he did at Hawthorn. And some of that was in the 2015 season, when on the eve of the finals he was having to take himself out of the system. I
got Al Clarkson has spoken very nicely about the great man. His feats as a player are extraordinary, and this has run parallel to his emergence as a great husband, father and mate. Selfless, humble, loyal and proud. The game will miss his theatre and drawing power. Been a privilege to share some of his journey, and I know his Hawks teammates will feel exactly the same. Someone came out recently, I don't know who it was, and said that he is the player of the 20s, of the 2000s. I don't think you can argue with that. Chris Judd's the only other one I would say has transcended
and Gary
whatever
Ablett,
other people could
Junior,
do.
maybe, given he started in that same period.
I don't reckon you can argue with him being the best player in that
I reckon if you throw the whole package in, and you throw in the pizzazz element too, don't you? I mean, and you've always brought those people to the attention of your listeners, and I'd imagine you would think that of your time in calling the game, there's no peers there. I mean, I still
Well, that
think
was
Carey's the best
before.
I've seen.
That's the era before,
different
yeah.
before era. Yeah, but in terms of the strut and the running style, I mean, he was an athlete, Bill, wasn't he? I mean,
he's a
pure athlete.
A 202 centimetre athlete.
And would give it to his opponents, and on the ground he was most comfortable, wasn't he? He was.
yeah.
I mean, the stories. I mean, he wasn't a massive sledge talker, but he would give it when he felt the
I
need.
still remember
arose.
Shane Crawford, who was a very good runner,
Wayne.
and he'd do a few laps after training, and Buddy, he'd be right alongside him.
He'd stay with
and
Crawford,
Crawford go,
yeah.
no, I'll run off him now. No, he'd still be there running with him
Yeah.
and things like that. 8 All-Australians. 8.
Yes, and he was named All Australian captain
Who's
too.
had the
which I was
most
glad.
All-Australians?
Paul
Someone's
Roos,
got
isn't it?
yeah. Paul Roos got
9.
8. Someone got 9. I think.
I thought
didn't
Roosie had
they?
9.
What's
Well,
Duck?
anyway.
Duck had 8.
Yeah.
3 on the bench, I think he started.
Oh, no, I don't think he was on the bench.
You got one.
On the bench.
Don't be surprised.
On the bench.
Could have won a Brownlow, Bill.
Oh, well, there was only 20 players back then. Me and Curly from West Coast on the bench.
We need to take a
4
break.
Colemans, by the way, too.
What an enormous
Yeah, well done,
contribution
bud.
he's made to the game. The superstar that
Do
he's
you know him?
I know him, but I don't think anyone knows him really well unless you're part of his inner sanctum. But yeah, I do. I mean,
So he'd say, "G'day, Damo."
yeah. Well, we had but through Pickering, Liam Pickering, there
shorten
were.
it up a bit.
Well, you asked me the question. Yeah, I did. I had social moments with him, Bill, but they were a while ago now, and he doesn't care for too many people outside of the ones he wants.
Do you know him, Jim?
Oh, not as much as I used to. When he was a Hawthorn, I
Yeah.
had a bit to do with him. I really like him.
No,
He's
same,
a
but
very
smart
personable,
man.
friendly,
Yeah.
quiet, nice bloke.
Yeah.
And where are we starting with the positives?
Well, it's hard to go past GWS, Jim. It's not the biggest team from a Melbourne/Victorian perspective, but what they've put together in the last 7 weeks, and you go back to when they finished round 10 with just 3 wins, Bill, and 7 losses, to
Yes.
get to this stage where right now they are sitting in sixth spot on the ladder. It's an extraordinary storyline, and it's not just Toby Green. We know the backline's as tight as anyone with Buckley and Taylor down there, and then you've got the midfield rejuvenation of Canelio there as well, and then obviously the Toby factor is still the X factor and the biggest weapon they've got. But it's all coming together. It's a very transportable way of playing footy. They now know that factually. They've won at 9 different venues this year. They're not going to be daunted by having to play anyone anywhere. So there's no reason to think that they can't keep it going well enough to finish in the 8 after the remaining 4 home and away games, and then to do some pretty significant damage by way of their own thoughts around it. So I love what they're doing, and equally it's significant with what Carlton's doing. I know we discussed it pretty much at length on Saturday after their Friday night win against the Collingwood Footy Club, but I just love when you reflect on it. The clubs that have the ability to change dramatically in season, you can talk about it and preparing to do it in the future, can't you? But to have the shock of the season unfolding the way it did when they lost 8 of those 9 games in a row in succession there. And then to regroup, and you spoke to Paddy Cripps on the weekend, Bill, and he revealed some of the private conversations they'd had at that time, and to get to this stage.
Piss up.
Pretty much so, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's changed since then. It's unbelievable what's come out of that Torquay little shindig.
Yeah.
Shinding.
And even his role, he's still important, but he's probably getting, let's go and say 6, 7, 8, just anecdotally less possessions than he was last year in compiling a Brownlow medal season. But he's a better player for it, isn't it? And the club is a better place for him being that way.
And Charlie, without Mackay,
Yeah.
But
stepped up.
No doubt. But also with no Walsh and no Chera after half time, that is a big win. It's a big win for the Blues.
And they pulled I feel too, a lot of the coaches will really go to town and go to work on what the Blues did against Collingwood in that game. Other clubs have tried to pull them apart, and Adelaide has had a couple of good cracks at it this year. Bill fell short both times, but Carlton was able to do it. Got the lead and then sustained it in the last quarter. So, yeah, it's great to see a goal kicker too with 4 rounds remaining, and the extra round this year does assist the cause, but they have 67 next to his name as Curnow does. And
well, Texan 61 too.
he's still a chance Texan.
Oh, don't worry about that.
And he really wants to win it, Jim.
Of course he does. Of course he does.
Story went
How
around the
much
previous
does he-
week when Curnow got to the 10 goals that he kicked against West Coast. With every goal that he managed to get next to his name, the shoulders of Texans slumped a little bit as it got further away from him. But he kicked 5 himself the previous week.
Round 24.
And then 7.
Wait for round
Yeah.
24.
There have been 2 players, in my humble opinion, that have defined the showdown. One of them was Chadwick Corns,
Yes.
who used to take those games very personally,
Yeah.
and the other one is Texan.
Yeah.
He could not wipe the smile off his face.
No.
beating Port
Yeah.
Adelaide
Yeah.
in a showdown and kicking
And to have
a
a
bag himself.
7 goals for
7-4. And
Robbie Gray's a good one, actually, Rabs.
Yeah, but I'm talking more of the gladiator. He's a star.
Yeah.
The blokes that just took the game on
Have you
with personality.
seen a better big man, skill-wise, left and right foot?
Carey was really good. But
Not
I-
left, not like
Oh,
this.
he's good at left foot,
Duck was
but I
very
agree with what you're saying
Buddy.
with Texan.
Yeah, Bud didn't have
Not
the
on the
side.
right
Not on the
foot.
right. I don't think.
Mate, Texan on that left foot, kick one from 50, ran around,
Yeah.
kicked it on the left,
And it went way beyond the line.
and he just hits it.
Yeah.
He's a Mark War,
Yeah,
and the
he
way he times it, it's unbelievable.
Yep.
No, start.
There's no coincidence that the 3 matches that the Melbourne Footy Club has now chosen to play without Brodie Grundy have also been the 3 matches that Max Gawn has gone back to All-Australian rucking best. He's got a late chance to mount a 7th All-Australian jacket, Bill.
He's second half, because I didn't see the game, but the first half apparently was not very good at all, and then he might have copped a bit of a rev, and I
Yeah.
think he responded
His
like
leadership-
champions do.
Yeah, look, I'll give you that, but I still thought he had done enough, at least by way of his attitude in the first half, and it kept them winning. Richmond had the early running on it, but yeah, you're right. The second half was just was next level, and the authority with which he plays, and he just ran Soldo into the ground, and the numbers that he's now producing in that round 18 to round 20 patch are so starkly better, Bill, from what was produced with Grundy in the mix between rounds 1 and 17.
Well, we asked him that, right? And he said, I've been doing it for 9 years. I've been rucking solo at that club for 9 years. Like, he had a go, didn't he? He wasn't happy that everyone's talking about it.
Don't leave Freo out.
Hang on.
Put it in there.
Are you positives?
Yeah,
Hang on, we haven't got there yet.
Only because
Harrison Petty, by the way, you've got to give. He's kicked 11 career goals before the week.
Yeah.
Before the weekend, he kicked 6.
Recruited as a forward, and now might end up being the most impactful
Viney,
player
very
there.
good player.
Yeah.
don't leave Freo out.
Now let's get to Freo then, because we all ventured down the highway
Did
quite
we?
excitedly in some people's demeanour that day, and you were very excited because you thought it was going to be a 100-point win, didn't you, Bill?
Fat was barracking in the commentary box,
Shirtless.
clapping And, yep, that's
Alex Pearce, how good was he?
it. Amazing.
He needed to
He got
be.
the 10 votes.
He got the 10, did he? Officially
so
from the
he
coaches.
should.
Yeah. Where did Sarong figure in those
Well,
votes? Bill?
actually, let me have a look here because we nearly saw goal of the year.
Yeah, from Roy Fredericks.
Michael Fredericks. That goal was unbelievable. So Alex Pearce, 10. Luke Jackson, 7.
Very good.
Tom Stewart, 7. I've never seen Tom Stewart make 3 mistakes in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You'd never see that.
Late.
Brayshaw, 4, and Sarong, 2. There you
Yep.
go.
Uh,
Well done, Freo.
I want to give Ross the boss a reference too here because the previous time St Kilda played Hawthorn, James Sicily ran amok, and you just knew that Ross was not going to let that happen a second time. Had a plan for it, got the job done, and helped keep the Saints in a nice position on the ladder and
5th.
snuff the Hawthorn
We've
chance
got
in that
Will
particular
Day
game.
coming up later on, actually. I want to ask him about Sis,
Yeah,
because I reckon his head nearly exploded when
Frosty.
Yep.
Frosty.
He very nearly belted his own
If someone can
teammate.
relate to that type of behaviour, though, I reckon
I
it might
know.
be James Sicily.
I agree. All right, we're going the other way next with purple.
Damian Barrett has stuck around his negatives from round 20.
Yeah, we'll start with what happened on Saturday night when Port Adelaide players Alir and Lockie Jones clashed. And we knew there was going to be some significant fallout for that when the AFL yesterday, Jim and Bill said, and Rabsy, that they were looking into, and Michael McDeasy, the Chief Medical Officer, was asking questions of Port Adelaide. Well, to use the news breaking part of this show now.
No, hello. Damo.
Did it.
Breaking news
Hot
with Billy Brownless.
Hot off the
Dave
email.
Colson, now this.
The AFL has issued the Port Adelaide Footy Club with a please explain regarding the concussion protocol management of Alir, specifically in relation to the club's decision not to undertake a SCAT 5 concussion test following the head injury assessment. So, long story short, they didn't like what they saw. And what happened there, they gave the SCAT test to Jones and then subbed him out with, if you believe this or not, a migraine, which then meant he was eligible by way of that definition to be playing next week.
That's why.
That's all in abeyance now because the last line of this release is both players will now need to undertake and medically pass the mandatory 11-step minimum 12-day process before returning to play. The AFL's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Michael McDeasy, will continue to liaise with Port Adelaide club doctors in the monitoring of both players' progress. So that's a
he
significant
doesn't play.
step from the AFL. The AFL doesn't often,
No.
if ever, come over the top of decisions made by club doctors, and they have on that occasion. I'm glad they did because the optics were terrible. I was happy for the AFL to play it out and then tell us what they found, and they've found quite adversely.
So they don't play Saturday night against the Cats.
You'd be happy with that.
Yeah, well, Hawkins out. And
Is he
Lips
definitely out?
Oh, Hawk will be. I would have.
Yeah.
It's a big hamstring to strain. Imagine that, looking at that on the scan. And Blixar's a bigger one.
Well, it's a worry, isn't it, Bill?
You
We may as well
can't
start
replace
there in the negatives because I think when they got back into the 8, that it was just a matter, by way of looking at this club, that they were just going to stay there and still potentially cause damage. Well, it's just a battle to get there now.
Well, it is, especially
After the Fremantle loss.
Port Adelaide, then Collingwood, then St Kilda, Western Bulldogs. So 4 hard games there. So, and Blixar's Hawk obviously very disappointing, but Blixar's, you just can't replace a bloke like that plays ruck, midfield, back, forward, wherever you want him. So yeah, they're going to struggle.
The Bulldogs lost to a good team in GWS, but when they were 35 points up,
Yes.
they shouldn't. And it could come back to cost them as well. They finished the round still entrenched in the 8, but it's a worry because they've lost Josh Bruce again with a serious knee injury. They're yet to officially publicly release the findings on the ACL damage, but we know that he missed 2021 with an ACL on the other knee that he's injured on the weekend. So he's out. Alex Keith will be out too with a concussion protocol. So it's a concern for them. They just can't seem to get on a roll enough.
35 points up at Ballarat. Just win by 40. It's a good win.
Yep. Equally, Brisbane Lions and Port Adelaide, they could have easily swapped ladder positions. Brisbane Lions were just outnumbered by Gold Coast in an embarrassing way for the Lions, it must be said. And the way that Ben King was allowed to play on Harris Andrews and get himself back into form and take away Brisbane's big weapon, which had been Harris Andrews being the intercepting player this year. So major problem.
You know who loves
for
those
them.
games the most? The Q Clash? Tuke Miller.
He does.
He got 10 votes from the coaches. He just loves those games.
He laid a tackle on Dane Zorko.
Did he grab him on the doodle?
The Zork felt he was unnecessarily
Got the Zork on the stalk.
in that region, Bill.
Damo.
Yes, he did, Bill.
Grabbed him on the doodle.
Zork on the stalk.
Well, he's gone public today on SEN saying that it wasn't comfortable in how it was done. So.
Well, but the AFL said no.
Well, they chose to sign off on it when they looked at it from a match review perspective. I looked at it as much as anyone can, and the hand is in that region, but it was inadvertently there as part of the tackle. Now, did it linger ever so slightly too long? Well, yeah, maybe it did, but I don't know what they could have done.
We'll just move on from this only because I'm tired of Bill's really flat jokes, almost Logie-esque.
That's cock to me. Oh, Coburn.
Port Adelaide, 3 losses in a row now.
Yes.
Now, when they got Carlton 3 weeks ago, they were injury depleted, and there was an element of just coming off those 13 wins. I thought they were really good against Collingwood last weekend. Lost the game, but I thought they were really good. But they weren't good at all against Adelaide Crows. I think there's concerns.
What is it about that matchup? Adelaide just fancy Port. Whenever they play them, they reckon they're going to win.
Doesn't matter. It never has where either team is on the ladder for that game, is it?
It's a bit like Freo in Geelong. Freo are the only team that go down there and play any good.
And the Giants.
Yeah.
Interstate clubs. Why has that happened down at Geelong? You're right there. What about Kenny? Kenny was
it's August tomorrow,
going to sign anything 3 weeks ago.
The way, as best we can tell on the outside, Bill, and it's not just me saying this, it's others who've got better connections than I do at Port Adelaide. It's been nod and wink to this point that he's going to stay. So it's August tomorrow. That's key because of the narrative that
John Longmire's
David
birthday
Koch has said.
Just when you think they don't get any lamer.
But a lot of people wouldn't even get that. And that's the problem. Essendon, 3 losses in a row also too.
Yes.
Geelong, Western Bulldogs, and disappointing on the weekend, Sydney. He thinks he's done his job.
He's now got feet up. Yep.
They've got North and West Coast to come, so they're probably going to still have a chance to make it. But they've lost 5 of 6 now too, which is a disturbing.
Well,
form line.
especially when they were going as well as they were. We all thought, hello.
Yeah.
This is starting to look good for them. So, yeah, it's come out of nowhere a bit for me.
And Jim, I don't want to finish on a negative with your perspective, but I'm just over North Melbourne gallantly losing. And I don't even like using the word gallant. I'm using that because other people use it. But 17 losses in a row. The game was yet again, as it was the previous week against St Kilda. Yesterday was there to be won by North against West Coast, and they weren't able to do it.
I was at Mission Impossible. So I didn't see it.
Oh, didn't you see it?
No,
didn't see the score or anything?
Dun,
Oh, don't. See? Who's going to finish last?
I think West
There's
Coast will stay there.
17%.
I don't see where West Coast. If they struggled to beat North Melbourne yesterday as they did, I don't see where their next win is going to come from.
So you can see Norths? Well, Clarko's back this week.
But I can't see North winning either. But they couldn't beat West Coast, and I can't see West Coast winning anyone.
Clarko back.
What difference will that make, do you think? No, I'm quite serious. I mean, it's
Hey,
obviously
well
a
done to Brett
significant
Ratton
moment.
for helping out.
He did a very good job.
He
Brett.
did. But he didn't win any matches, and it's now 17 in a row.
Oh, don't
and
know.
it's 17 in a row, Bill.
Just try and find something.
No, you can't. I'm happy to be positive if there's reason to be.
Damien.
Well, you tell me what it is. About it.
He's
What?
coached 198 games. Well done, Brett Ratton.
well done.
Australia make 240 tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, they can.
They can.
I wouldn't have said yes to that when they started the innings leading 388.
Yep.
But 245 is a different scenario.
Ooh, hello.
Sam
Thinks yes.
Kerr, will she play tonight?
Yep. But I don't know in what capacity, and it might be off the bench. And that is going to be a disaster, isn't it, for
If they
Australian
lose.
women's soccer if they somehow have a home tournament where she either doesn't play or they're out in the qualifying rounds.
Yeah.
And you've also got two other players who happen to concuss themselves.
And
in
New
a training
Zealand
session.
also out. So the two hosts.
Yes.
Come
Yes.
on, girls.
No,
Come on, girls. Well done, Purple.
Well,
Good
let's
seeing
be
you.
positive, and they're going to win.
Okay.
Old half glass.
Tackle, doodle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stalk.
Horse's birthday.
Horse's birthday.
birthday.
gonna
You're
text-
not at your best.
I'm going to text him tomorrow.
You're not at your best.
John Longmore and say, happy birthday.
Bad luck about Buddy, but happy birthday.
Thanks, Dan, mate.